Today we're going to talk about polymers. Polymers are large macromolecules composed of many smaller units known as monomers. So here's a visual representation. Let's say A represents a monomer. The prefix mono means one. The prefix poly means many. So polymer is composed of many smaller units known as monomers. During polymerization, these smaller units will get together and form a larger macromolecule. So that's the basic idea of a polymer. Now, a polymer can have hundreds or thousands of molecules, maybe even tens of thousands. So this can go on for a very long time. Now, when dealing with polymers, sometimes you may have different end groups. What you need to know is that when a polymer is very large, it is the repeating units that determines the physical properties of the polymer. If you have 10,000 of these A units, the identity of Y and Z, the end parts of the polymers, won't matter as much. So it's really what's the repeating unit in the middle that will determine the physical properties of the monomer. The beginning and the end, it can vary depending on if you're using a free radical to initiate the polymerization, or if you're using a nucleophile in the case of anionic polymerization, or if you're using an electrophile in the case of cationic polymerization. So the identity of Y and Z can vary, but the key here is that it's the structure of the repeating units that determine the physical properties and also the size of the molecule as well. So now that we've discussed the basics of polymers, let's talk about some common natural polymers that you've encountered, likely in biology. So think of DNA. DNA is a natural polymer. Now, what is the monomer of DNA, if you remember? DNA is composed of nucleotides. So that's the monomer of DNA. So think of nucleotides like adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, or uracil in the case of RNA. Uracil is found in RNA but not in DNA. Another example of a natural polymer are proteins. The monomer or the monomers of proteins are amino acids. So think of amino acids like tryptophan, histidine, cysteine, methionine, glycine, proline, valine, isoleucine. Those are the monomers of proteins. Another example of a common natural polymer are polysaccharides. So think of polysaccharides like starch, cellulose. The monomers of polysaccharides are known as monosaccharides. The monomers of starch and cellulose is glucose. So there's a lot of there's a lot of polymers in nature that you've encountered many times. Now, in the context of organic chemistry, a common monomer that you're going to see is ethylene and substituted ethylene molecules. So here's ethylene, also known as ethene. It's a 2-carbon alkene. And during polymerization, it will turn into polyethylene. Polyethylene is actually an alkane, but the ene comes from the fact that the monomer is an alkene. So this is the repeating unit of polyethylene. Now, when dealing with substituted ethylene molecules, it's going to work in a very similar way. So let's say Z is, or we could say R. That's like the part that changes. During polymerization, the repeating unit is going to look like this. Basically, you get rid of the double bond and just you draw what you see. So that's how you can draw the repeating unit of if you're given the monomer in as a substituted ethylene derivative. So here's an example for you. Draw the repeating unit of ethyl chloride. So during polymerization, ethyl chloride will become PVC. PVC stands for polyvinyl chloride. It all comes from the polymerization of ethyl chloride. PVC is found in piping. You've probably seen it used in plastic bottles. So polymers have a lot of practical applications in real life. Let's look at another example. Consider the molecule styrene. The R group is a benzene ring. Go ahead and draw the repeating unit for styrene. Feel free to pause the video as you work on this example. So all we got to do is draw what we see, but we're going to get rid of the double bond and turn it into a single bond. And attach two bonds, one to the left, one to the right, insert a bracket, and that's all we need to do to draw the repeating unit if we're given a substituted ethylene molecule. So the monomer is styrene. The polymer is called polystyrene. Now polystyrene is used for insulation. Think of certain hot drink cups like maybe a styrofoam cup. It's also used in egg cartons and other things like that as well. Now let's talk about the reaction mechanism for the formation of some of these polymers. So first, let's use ethyl chloride. The first type of polymerization mechanism we're going to talk about is radical polymerization. The initiator is going to be a radical. So let's say we have an organic peroxide. If we apply UV light or heat, this bond that connects the two oxygens is going to break homolytically, generating two powerful radicals. Keep in mind, a free radical is basically a molecule with an unpaired number of electrons, or an odd number of electrons. Now, this free radical is going to react with ethyl chloride. Now, this double bond here, or this bond here, has two electrons. And remember, a half arrow represents the flow of one electron. So one electron in that pi bond is going to interact with the free radical electron, and that's going to form a bond between the oxygen and the CH2 carbon. So we're going to have RO-CH2. Now the other electron in this pi bond is going to become a radical on the CH carbon. So this is what we now have. Now this radical is going to react with another ethyl chloride molecule. I'm going to draw it right here. And the mechanism will be the same. We're going to use half arrows when dealing with radical reactions. So now these two electrons will form a bond between the CH carbon and the CH2 carbon. So we're going to have RO, everything here, CH2CH, Cl. Now this CH carbon is connected to that CH2 carbon. We broke the double bond, so now we have a single bond. And now the radical is on the CH carbon. And this process is going to continue. So let's do another step. So we're going to react this with another ethyl chloride molecule. Whoops. So now let's draw what we have. After a while, writing this out takes some time. It becomes tedious. But it really helps if you do it at least 3 times, maybe 4. At that point, you can clearly see the repeating unit. So here's the beginning part of the chain. The repeating unit, we can clearly see it's this part of the molecule. As we drew before, it's CH2, CH, Cl. Now we can put an N here because sometimes we can have 10 repeating units, sometimes you can have 100, sometimes N could be 1,000. So this can go on for a long time, depending on concentration, reaction conditions, pressure, and temperature, and all that stuff. Now, so far, we talked about the initiation step of this mechanism, which was the formation of the radicals. This step here, where we had a radical reacting with an alkene to produce another radical, that's a propagation step. Now there's also termination steps. If this meets up with another radical, these two can get together and they can basically terminate the reaction. In this case, this will be an OR group. Now the ending can also vary as well. Sometimes it can just be an alkane, sometimes it could be an alkene. You can get a disproportionation reaction. There's a lot of things that can happen here, but we're not going to focus too much on the end part of the molecule. Now the next type of polymerization reaction that we're going to talk about is a cationic polymerization reaction. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use an electrophile to initiate this reaction. A good electrophile is boron trifluoride in the presence of water. If we react an acid with an alkene, like HBr or HCl, it'll create basically a bromoalkane, like ethyl bromide, ethyl chloride, which we're not looking for that. But when we put boron trifluoride in water, water is going to react with the boron, and we're going to get this molecule. Now the boron has 4 bonds, so it's going to have a negative formal charge. Oxygen is going to have a positive formal charge. And whenever oxygen has 3 bonds, the hydrogen that's attached to that oxygen is acidic. And that's going to be our electrophile here. Now let's combine that with an alkene. So the monomer that I'm going to use is called methyl vinyl ether. So we still have our ethylene, our substituted ethylene derivative, but the R group is an OCH3 group this time instead of a Cl. So in this case, the alkene is going to act as a nucleophile, and it's going to react with the electrophilic hydrogen. These electrons are going to go back to the oxygen. Now, which carbon will the hydrogen add to? Will it add to the CH2 carbon or the CH carbon? So this is going to follow the Markovnikov's rule, where the hydrogen is going to go on the carbon with more hydrogens, in this case, this carbon here. So we're going to have CH3. And note that the positive charge is on this carbon. Now, that positive charge is stabilized by the oxygen atom. The oxygen can donate a pair of electrons, and through electron delocalization and resonance, it can stabilize the carbocation. So this particular type of molecule, methyl vinyl ether, works pretty well under cationic polymerization because this R group can stabilize the carbocation. So certain derivatives, certain R groups may favor one type of polymerization reaction compared to another. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make some extra space. Now, once we have this carbocation, we can react it with another monomer. The 2 electrons in this pi bond is going to react with the carbocation, and we're going to form a bond between the CH carbon and the CH2 carbon. So we're going to get this result. So now the positive charge is on the next CH carbon, which is stabilized by this OCH3 group. And this is going to react again with another monomer. Now, after doing it 3 times, sometimes you may need to do it 4 times, at this point you can clearly see the repeating unit. So this is what's going to happen after this step. But if we want to, we can continue the chain. We know what's going to happen next. If we do it again, it's going to be another CH2, CH, OCH3. And then I'm just going to put an X for the N group. The N group could vary, but I'm not going to get too much into that. what I want to do here is identify the repeating unit. So where is the repeating unit here? Notice that we always have a CH, we always have a CH2, and we always have an OCH3. What we don't have is the beginning part of the molecule, CH3, it's not there in the repeating unit. And the ending, it's not there as well. Now what I like to do is, I like to find out where to start the repeating unit. Should we start it here? Or should we start it here? What would you say? I like to start it from left to right based on the monomer. If we look at the monomer, it starts with the CH2, not with the CH. So based on the way that's written, I'm going to start the repeating unit with the CH2. And so that right there is the repeating unit. So all we got to do is look at the monomer, turn the double bond into a single bond, keep the R group the same, add 2 additional lines, one to the left, one to the right, and then just insert the brackets. Now let's move on to the next topic. Let's talk about anionic polymerization. So remember, in the case of cationic polymerization, we use an electrophile to initiate the reaction. In the case of anionic polymerization, we're going to use a nucleophile to get this reaction going. So we need to use a very good nucleophile. Sodium amide could work in this case. You can also use butyllithium. But I'm going to use sodium amide. In this case, NH2-. Now, I'm going to use styrene as the monomer. So instead of drawing the benzene ring, I'm just going to put a phenyl group. Now remember, it's the nucleophile that attacks the electrophile. In cationic polymerization, the monomer, the alkene, was the nucleophile. In anionic polymerization, this is the nucleophile. So we're going to start the arrow from there. It's going to attack the CH2 group, and it's going to put a lone pair on the benzene ring. Now, you might be wondering, why does the nucleophile, which is also a base in this case, why does it attack the CH2 molecule and not the CH molecule? Well, the first reason is that this one is more accessible. This CH molecule, it's less accessible because of the benzene ring. This is a primary carbon, this is a secondary carbon. The second reason is, putting the lone pair on a CH carbon, it's a better situation because those electrons can delocalize into the benzene ring. And so the benzene ring can help stabilize the negative charge through resonance. Also, if your R group, if it's an electron withdrawing group, that can also stabilize the negative charge. In the case of cationic polymerization, the OCH3 group that we had was an electron donating group, and those groups can stabilize a positive charge, but electron withdrawing groups can stabilize a negative charge. And so depending on what type of R group you have on a monomer, it may favor anionic polymerization over cationic polymerization. So now we're going to react this with another styrene molecule. So the nucleophile is going to attack the CH2 again, put in another negative charge on the CH. And this is going to continue to build in that manner. Now let's add an additional step. Let's do this one more time. So at this point, you can clearly see the repeating unit in this chain. And we can draw it based on the monomer. So I'm going to start with the CH2. And the CH in the phenyl group will be on the right side of the bracket. So that is the repeating unit of the polymer. So that's basically it for this video. Hopefully it gave you a good introduction into polymerization and the different forms of polymerization, such as radical polymerization, cationic polymerization, and anionic polymerization. There's also other types of polymerization like condensation polymerization, but I think I may put that in another video. Thanks for watching.